Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Monday, May 29th, so we're right at the end of May. The Memorial Day weekend in the United States happened, so it was kind of a slow weekend as far as news. So they've added a new solo mode in Yu-Gi-Oh! I imagine a Japanese company doesn't really care too much about Memorial Day. In fact, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel has noticeably not tried to ape any holidays. It'll be, I guess, a little interesting if we get around Christmas, and they even did something there. I don't think they did anything last year. They have a survey here for the World's Championship Series qualifiers, which, if there was a reward on that, I might fill that survey out just to vent, if nothing else. And then there is a tryout duel mini event starting June 1st through the 4th, so a smaller event. I guess that means I should do the solo stuff in particular to get the daily quest done. Like, I did play off screen, and so I got all of the missions as far as the World Championships done. So we're good there. But yeah, we have one day to just do these daily quests. And that's it. Like, that's the only thing we have to do for today. And let's see. Is there any real thing to do here? Like, we have no packs, so opening any bonus packs here can't be done. We have legacy packs, so we can open 10 legacy packs here, with this being a new card and this being a new card. Skull Dice used to be a card worth mentioning. Nowadays, probably not so much. But there's no accessories or structured decks or anything like that that I haven't purchased. They are darker now. That's nice. That makes it very easy for things that you can purchase to jump out. And it makes it very easy for somebody who's looking to make sure they have everything to be certain about that. So, like, let's see. As far as the solo mode stuff, I did finish Lego DC Super Villains. It's one of the worst Lego games just because of the story writing and all of that. But yeah, I don't know if I have anything really positive to say around it. It's got way too many characters with way too many abilities. It's got this crazy story that bounces around through a bunch of characters. I see Andrew on the chat going, "Yo, what's up?" Hi, Andrew. Yeah, we have 3 new solo mode things, but I don't want to do those in the live streams. I never got to level 19. I got up to level 18 in the World Championship. So I missed out on 100 gems and a title, which is not that bad. And if I had gotten really lucky, I would have gotten 10 more tickets, probably, not making it to the top 1,000. But that's overall a decent experience as far as rewards. It did lead to the point I literally can't play anything today. We'll have to just do casual matches. Like, if I play any rank, I'll fall out of platinum and I won't lose. But I fell down a rank on this. So this is going to be weird. day. I am starting late today, so it would help, frankly, to play a little bit less. But you really shouldn't be in a situation where at the end of the month for one day you literally shouldn't play any of Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay. The bigger progress I would say that I made over the weekend, the thing I guess I'm more proud of. Interesting. So now there's all these different kinds of regulation decks you can filter through. Is I have rewritten the rules. I'm hoping on the chat. I'm hoping that they're a little bit more positive. There's a lot more do's. It's written in a very different way. So it's you can't really format the comments on chat. So even if you're the moderator, so like maybe this will give more ideas as far as what I would like to see people talk about in the chat, and unfortunately what I don't want to see people talk about in the chat. But yeah, it does often seem like either you just embrace the chaos in chats, and this is just universal on the internet, so that you get more comments because all you care about is interactions and comments for an algorithm, or you try to have a well-maintained chat that has positivity, and then it eventually just boils down to the most censored, strict environment where only a few people are actually talking, and there sadly doesn't really feel like there's a really good middle ground there. Honestly, I don't know if there ever was a middle ground there. I've also figured out how to make interstitial screens, which I will show when we start going through the news. In what I was going to do, so yeah, on Yu-Gi-Oh! Here we have the darker gray showing you all the cards I'm missing. So let's open 30 packs of this, or at least 10 packs of this. What I was originally going to do is have a custom local web page happen in between each section. So when we get to the Video Games Chronicles news, there would be a web page to kind of break that up visually, and I even wrote up explanations as far as my general opinion about Video Games Chronicles and their focus and how good they are as a journalist, as a mainstream video game journalist. And I was going to do that as a local page. Well, the macro I use with Selenium UI Vision that automates opening and manipulating web pages can't open local HTML files, local web pages. You just can't cross that barrier, probably for security sandboxing reasons. And so I felt like I was going to be dead in the water. What I was thinking maybe I would have to do is find a website that would let me perhaps post text in a URL format. That is, sometimes you'll click on a link and it will have question mark equal at the end, and there'll be some values and variables. I was thinking maybe I could find a website that would let me post that, and then it would take that posted information and dynamically generate a web page. But then I started to think about it some more and try and figure out what's the best way to do this, and I realized that the PowerPoint clone that Google Documents have, whether it's Google Present or I don't even know the name of it, that PowerPoint clone is online. PowerPoint in general I think is a terrible software, and that the mostly secretaries that know how to use PowerPoint have been given a very great disservice in that they've learned a skill for a terrible software to really just waste a lot of time, because honestly, when it comes to presenting information, you're much better to either have a very analytical presentation using Excel or Google Sheets for data and using charts and graphs to show actual information, or a more professional writing presentation of using Word or documents, which would be mostly text. PowerPoint is in this middle step where it's, let's make some quick and dirty pictures that you might generally be making for like kindergartners or something, a very undiscerning crowd, at least, whatever that undiscerning crowd may be, to present really a small amount of information in a PowerPoint. Most PowerPoint slides have just 4 or 5 sentences on them. They're made really to be projected on the screen from, so the font is really big. There's a bunch of gimmickry, particularly in PowerPoint too, and you're just doing like clip art, pre-rendered art, things like that. I guess in a lot of ways, PowerPoint, my feelings around PowerPoint being just kind of a bad software that leads to bad products, is a lot like what I imagine we'll start to think of the AI generated art, in that it will be the quick and dirty thing. I could very easily see somebody putting AI art generation into PowerPoint, and then you would just type a description of a picture, and then all of a sudden you've got your PowerPoint slide done for you. But it won't have a lot of meaning, and it won't have a lot of polish. Oops, I didn't mean to click skip there. Andrew asks, how's it going? A while ago. So far so good, I guess, personally. But yeah, anyways, to complete my story, I found out the Google PowerPoint program allows you to share and have a published URL. So I just made a bunch for each section of this live stream. I made a bunch of 1-slide PowerPoint presentations. Unfortunately, they have black bars on the side, so I had to go with a black background to hide that. But that was really the only adjustment there. There is going to be a problem, certainly, in that I'm not likely to waste a lot of times on those screens. So it is going to be a very much flash in the pan in future presentations, where it's going to pop up, it's going to have a lot to say, and I'm just going to require people to potentially pause on that single frame if they want to read the general descriptions. And yeah, there very possibly would be an argument to have another slide at the beginning of these presentations to just explain what the presentation is, or call this the pre-show accountability section that I'm doing right now. So we've opened 20 now. Is there enough of an argument to open another 30? Well, another 10. Yeah, let's do one more 10. Alright, we may do 20 now. If we don't get an ultra rare in any of these 10 packs, if nothing gets hit by lightning and turns into an ultra pack, then we will have a guaranteed ultra pack in the next 10 packs, which would be another 1,000. Now that I've finished Lego DC Supervillains, I haven't put any thought whatsoever into the next game I will play. So I need to do that, but I also need to just schedule a bunch of videos. I haven't done any scheduling probably in 2 months. I need to upload YouTube Shorts constantly, or I'll get overwhelmed with that constantly. So there's just a lot of paperwork. I could see taking this whole next week kind of off as far as making footage in favor of forcing myself to schedule. Of course, there's a lot of distractions and phone games that I'm doing right now that could get in the way of that, or just general sleeping. Also, should probably do a Lego set. I'm very backlogged on Lego sets, and if anything, I should probably very consistently just reward myself as an adult fan of Lego by doing a Lego set after every single time I've made a full series. Even though in this case it was going from playing a Lego video game, Lego DC Supervillains, to potentially doing a real world Lego set. That makes me sound a lot more obsessed with Legos than I actually am. I did see that new Pac-Man Lego set that is now out, and the chain drive gimmick in the middle where the Ghosts and Pac-Man go in circles is a full loop. So there we go, we did not get any ultra rares, so now we have this guaranteed ultra rare if you spend another 1,000, which, since this is a limited thing, we kind of need to do that. Now we have 2 ultra rares at least. I still kind of feel like the Pac-Man set is in this weird place because you really would have to be a major fan of Pac-Man to want to spend as much as it costs. And it just feels like yet another price that is very high. Either the licensing negotiations are bad by Lego, or they get a licensed product and then they just like double the price from what it should be, and then try and justify the price by throwing in too many pieces that people wouldn't really care about. Particularly in the Lego Pac-Man set, there are 3 separate sets in one in that, because you have the tabletop arcade with the chain drive gimmick that adds motion, and the light up button which adds some lighting effects, not much but a little. Then you have a minifig cabinet Pac-Man set that you could have sold separately for maybe $30-40, and then you have the Ghost and Pac-Man topper that goes on top of the tabletop desk, which you could have sold for $80 or $90. So yeah, if you say that the mini thing is going to be a little overpriced at $30 and the topper is going to be a little overpriced at $80, that's $110. Then you put another $100 into the tabletop. That's still, I think, less than what the 3 sets are being sold as in the real world, which I think is somewhere close to $270. Yeah. Let's see, do I have anything else to really talk about? I probably should just jump into playing games pretty quickly here. Alright, so now that we've bought 40 packs of this, we have as good as it's going to get as far as this set. And these cards Were any of these cards tier lament cards, though? Since we know that that is the deck everybody is playing, it would kind of be very helpful if that was the selection packs that the game was selling. I don't recognize any of these cards as what's being played in the top tier meta decks. So much so that I'm questioning where the tier laments deck came from. Did somebody figure something out about old cards? Or is there a new pack that I'm missing? Yeah, there's no tier laments in this collection. This is the tier laments collection. Okay. Would this have been a good candidate to try and get more of these cards? Or should I just use crafting? Well, you know what? Now would be the time, if ever, to actually think about making a meta deck. I have literally nothing to do today. Anyways. Of the featured cards here, this isn't really a good candidate to open a secret pack. It would be nice to just stay at 4,000 of the cards here. This isn't the greatest of options. And I think I've just opened all of these secret packs at this point until they start adding new secret packs. This isn't really a great option either. Alright, so let's do that. New deck. Copy from linked deck list. How would we do that? What does that do? You have to go to the Yu-Gi-Oh card database. Okay. So we don't want to do that. Probably. Let's start off by dismantling all the extra cards and see what we get extra after buying those 4,000 packs. Yeah, and there's not even any news today. Memorial Day weekend probably is the best point. One of probably 4 points at minimum per year I need to find to rebuild decks. So the extra gives us 900 crafting points for normal, 645 for rares, 40 for super rares, and none for ultra rares. I was watching on Freevee/Amazon Prime the let's see, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Meta Deck. Just type that in the search and figure out what website comes up. We have a masterduelmeta.com. Okay, let's try that. So yeah, I was watching the Twilight Zone, and the first season was pretty awful. But I will say the second season did feel like it is a lot better. Perhaps that is because in the second season there's not as much just in your face preachiness or SJWE ness. Even though there probably should be a lot of progressive, controversial, or ideology in Twilight Zone, since the old Twilight Zone was very progressive for its time. It just came off extremely preachy and honestly just badly written as far as the other stories being told. But the second season feels like it's a slight improvement. That being said, it is worth probably pointing out that the what does this logo here mean? I've got to open a new tab every time I click on something. Enabled, let's disable that. Top decks. For diamond, I guess would be tier laments. For tournaments, tier laments. Spicy decks. Free to play as Formula Athletes. Qualifiers was Gym Knights. I'm apparently turning off filters. So the tier laments deck, I assume this is ranked this way. And this is the problem with meta decks in general, is that you are just going to end up copying people over and over again. Is this deck, which this is a Cyberstein deck and all of that. Let's see, sharing to Master Duel. You need a registered Master Duel, must log into the Yugi database. Okay. So that seems like that wouldn't work. Like some of these just being added to the clipboard. I don't think you can just like add cards via the clipboard. No pasting options. So we'll just do this the old-fashioned way. We'll have to type in each name and add each card. So the first one we know is Cyberstein. So you can only have one of those. Add that. Then max C times 3. Max with 2 X's. Did that autocorrect? No. 1, 2, 3. We're going to build it as it is. The next card we would want is Tier Laments Meryl, and at that point we just type in Tier Laments, and that will help us figure out all the Tier Laments in this deck. It wants 3 of these. Nope, 2 of those. You can't have 3. It wants 2 of these. It wants, let's see, some extras. Why is my mouse not wanting to work? One of the things that I ran into with the very last recording at the very end um, of playing Lego DC Supervillains is that my computer just hard crashed once one of these. And I don't know if that is my new backup software touched some file and caused some problem, or if it was just a random crash. In all fairness, and I really don't have any good reason to blame my backup software, because Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not Yu-Gi-Oh! But Lego DC Supervillains was getting incredibly buggy. Anyways, at that point, it was getting crashy. Right, we want 3 Ash Blossoms. Some of these cards are kind of still the same thing. Like Ash Blossom, Maxi, those are so overpowered as cards that they are showing up no matter what. A card called Fairy Tale Snow. I'm gonna have to learn a lot if I really do play this deck. Tear Laments, Rhino Heart. Is next. This one is the next one after that. Come on, where's the card I'm looking for? There it is. Wants me to have 3 of these. This is going to break me, but we should just build the deck anyways. There's clearly too many ultra rares in this deck. Kelbeck, Ancient Guardian. Didn't spell it right, but it still worked. Keldo, Sacred Protector. What is going on? I feel like one of my batteries is either low, or once again my wireless receiver is not getting the signal for some reason on my wireless mouse and keyboard. Murders the Sword Oracle. How's that spelled? M-U-R-D-O-R-A. What am I? Let's try Oracle. Yeah, M-U-R-D-O-R-A. Weirdly was not bringing up anything. Come on. What is going on? I think my battery on my mouse is dying. Do I have extra batteries, or did I move those just as I might have needed them? And then Agido, the Ancient Sentient. At the very least, this will be something I can point to say, hey, I can't afford the Tier Laments deck. Also, this would be a great point to when terraforming with 2 R's. This is the first spell card. Foolish Burial. What is this? Goods. Burial. Goods. Tier Laments Grief. It's weird that potentially have an entire series of cards around around grief or lamenting. Perforino. Lear. You could really, at this point, just give up. Because there's no way we're going to make this. And there might be some slight modifications that you could try, but it isn't going to be much. So we're looking for Exchange of the Spirit, which is there, and then Top Secret. Oh wait, no, Tier Laments. Select Sulik. S-U-L-L. S-U-L-L. And then Grave Creeper's Trap. Here. You can easily see why I don't usually bother to make decks. It's just a huge amount of time towards a disappointment that I feel like even most people would have this same disappointment. Even if you did have a ton of cards, you're just not likely to have all the cards. Could probably at this point see if I could filter to extra cards only. How would you filter extra cards though? We'd have to, I mean, there isn't an extra deck filter here. So yeah, you can't filter. So I'm looking for pre-plant. A lot of these words are obviously made up too. Predaplant. Dragon Stapledia. And then that one we already got. That one we already got. Now, Exteroia. This is all a lot of nonsense. Exterio. Alright, now we have a bunch of XYZ things. Gigantic Sprite. That's PRIGHT. Abyss Dweller. It definitely is questionable too whether people really care about me making a deck, but I'm just gonna put it out there that I wouldn't bother to make a deck off screen. Obviously, I haven't done it. Downerd Magician. So, Evil Swarm. I'm looking just for keywords to type into this. And basically, if I don't have it, that's probably the card they're looking for. Number 60. Apparently all of these numbers, as far as extra cards and XYZs, were implied to be from a different dimension in the anime series, in which they were introduced, with the XYZ summoning being just a major focus. Time Thief Redoer. Almost done. Number 41. Zeus. We do know we have that. Dark, the Dark Charmer, spelled DHARC. And then one more, Sprite Elf, SPRIGHT. Is that how that was spelled? There. So, about 30 minutes to build the deck while falling online. And we get to this point. So how much would it cost to generate this? It would cost me 600 ultra rares, of which I'm missing 50, and 210 super rares. So I would have to figure out a way to get rid of some of the ultra rare cards that are here. And that's just It'd be very difficult to do. To generate one of these is 300, so I'd need to get rid of about 2 of these. So if we said get rid of that one, for instance, because we know what max C does, and that's not that big of a deal, and we could instead use Call of the Grave, which let's just add that and make a slight modification. Can we even find Call of the Grave as a spell? We might also use the other spell as a replacement. Let's see. Try that again. Call Grave. Here we are. Okay, that fixes that. Adding a field spell to get a field spell is probably important, assuming we have this field spell, which, yeah. So, during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you do, send 1 card to your hand. You can discard this and 1 other Earth Fairy monster special summon this card from your hand. I would say probably get rid of one of those. Then that gets us to 5 ultra rares, but this is also just wasting all my ultra rare crafting points. So we need to get rid of 1 more ultra rare. And the crazy thing is there will just be another expansion, almost certainly. Okay. See if we can think of what I'm... You could do Crossout Designator, but I also think I would like Whirlwind. What is the name of that? Or Harpy's Feather Duster. Let's just be somewhat more realistic around this, and is that card I'm thinking of called Blessing? No. Let's get rid of anything that has like 3 ultra rares that have to be crafted, and then that will make the cards a little bit weaker, but a little bit more reasonable. And then this Two Laments character card is a big one. This one here seems to be all around predator counters. So let's think about things like that. Like this Nature of Beast Barkin doesn't even seem like a card I would ever... Like, how would I even summon this other than using Cyberstein? Yeah, I have to use Cyberstein to basically summon this, it seems like. You're not even trying to summon this. 2 level 2 monsters. How many level 2 monsters do we have? Oh, seems like enough. 2 level 4 monsters. Seems like we could do that. 2 level 4 spellcaster monsters. Let's assume we have that. 2 level 2 monsters. These are XYZ summons. Too, so those are all good. 2 level 12 monsters to get to Zeus, though. All of these cards are XYZ cards to get to Zeus. 2 monsters including a dark monster. 2 monsters including a level rank thing. Link 2 monster. I don't think this is a worthy card to craft. Let's get rid of that. And in favor, I guess what we're looking for is just generic XYZ things, because there's not the best reason to stick with these XYZs. Right. So XYZ monsters that we actually own, sort by rarity. 5 level cards. Right. We have Zeus. 2 number with the same rank once per turn. You probably want more simplistic XYZ cards than this. Things that would be lower. So let's just look at what we own. 2 level 8s, 2 level light insects. Here we have 2 level 2 monsters, so let's throw that in as a rare. I kind of like that card, so we may come back and get more of those. We're looking for level 2 monsters and level 4 monsters. I don't think we have any level 1 monsters. You can tell that the XYZ concept went on way too long, and it almost doubles a perceived concept of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and really competes to the idea of the fusion deck just being fusion cards before this point. Yeah, we'll take Utopia. I think he's probably a good one to take. I've seen people play that. What is Utopia's ability? And negate attacks. That's probably really good. And then let's take one of those, and let's take Trident. And or and then we'll just toss everything else. And that's gonna save us on the crafting at that point. The truth of it is you really aren't ever going to have enough crafting points to do everything that you would want to do following one of these meta duels if you're a free-to-player. The fact that I'm even close enough to it where I could actually pull this off is kind of shocking. 150 super rares, not terrible. 360 ultra rares is kind of terrible. I can obviously say yes to this because that's a generic card that makes a lot of sense. What doesn't make 100% sense would be crafting things like this. Fusion and dark monsters. Let's see. This changes the level. And this is the pre-to-plant cards. Do we have any other pre-to-plant cards in this whole deck? No, so let's get rid of that. And in favor, I don't remember the other XYZ Beast Warrior. Are these all Beast Warrior XYZs? Yes, they are. So if I came over here and selected Beast Warrior as another filter, and then remove this filter, should be able to find the card I'm thinking of. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. Then you have two elements. This Sword Oracle. Discard one other Earth Fairy card to summon this, which would be what? What is our fairy Earth character? This card here is synergizing with this card and this card. So yeah, if you wanted to get rid of the Earth Fairies and put a completely different concept here, you wouldn't have to craft all these cards, and then you would just have a 2 elements. Unfortunately, that would probably change about half of your deck build, and I've already modified it all. So we're going to throw caution to the wind and spend 330 ultra rare crafting points and 120 super rare crafting points to generate what we're missing. And did we get anything? We got a glossy finish on one card for 2 elements. Rhino Heart. We have a Arrow Gaming on the chat saying hi. And then everything is just basic non-foil finish. So deck save. How do we kind of change the name? Change the name there, I guess. Click save. Click back. We have 2 elements. Let's see. Change accessories, I guess. I have no idea which of these decks would synergize with Duelist, if any of them do. Doesn't seem like any of them really do. If anything, all these deck boxes feel different, so we'll just make a blue, and then we probably should screw around a little bit more with this stuff. I don't know what this icon down here in the bottom means. Now, I wouldn't mind if there was just a whole secondary launch of Yu-Gi-Oh! Since it's such an old game, just a rebooted card series. That is kind of what they're trying to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush in Japan, but they're changing the rules of how the game plays, whereas I would just kind of be alright with them changing the card back. And this is the same thing with like Magic the Gathering too. I'd be fine with them changing the card back and saying everybody with the old card back is a legacy deck or legacy cards, and you can't play them in like tournament play anymore. Video Game Awards, Duelist Cup. Not very interesting to have those slightly different backgrounds. And see, I wouldn't really want to play qualifiers. I think this is probably the better background. Aero Gaming, I guess now that I've changed the rules again at the top, when somebody doesn't seem to have read the rules, I'm just going to perhaps mention read the rules, but mostly I'm just going to ignore people. So for Aero Gaming, he's asking a question, I would suggest reading the rules. There is actually quite a lot of variety here in these cards. So, in these playfields. Let's just start with this. I think I'll probably want to play these Starfields. Is there really a lot of reason why I'd want to change any of this, though? I mean, it's gonna... These items should really be directly connected to this item. So if I'm doing Spellbook Star Hall, then Spellbook Star Hall would be what you would want there. And then I have very little interest in changing the bases, but we'll synergize it and synchronize it, not synergize it, but synchronize it with that. And then our main cards, that's the thing. We would want this. Probably that card. And then I bet that card makes a lot of sense. And then we'll make that card. Yeah, I think those are probably our three main cards to focus on. So I've made a tier limits deck. I've decorated a lot more. We now have this possibility of wanting to play more. The fact that you have this World Championship deck that was kind of customly created for me, I wouldn't want to delete it because it has this whole background option to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it just disappears also, though. So we've been just collecting all the decks. Okay. So the other option, certainly though, as far as the Master Duel meta, would have been to click free to play and try something like this deck here and try to craft that. Very possibly, as a free to play deck, this would have worked fairly well. I am a free to play player, but I've been playing from the beginning and been fairly good about doing all the dailies and such, so I had enough crafting to avoid this. But this is where I would put my focus if I was a brand new player or if I was a player who hasn't played a lot. This card I've seen has been used against me. Actually, it's a decent card potentially to have in my tier limits deck. These are the cards I don't really recognize, but reasoning and terraforming are probably cards that are valuable to own no matter what. Same as Pot of Exchange, things that are going to have you draw cards. This looks like this is a very heavy around drawing cards, probably to counter the fact that you're mostly only focusing on these top 5 cards at the top. Like, that's actually a very small amount of cards. There's almost certainly less options and less counters in a deck like this compared to tier elements and the top tier meta decks. And I imagine these fusion cards are much simpler cards because they're just good old-fashioned fusion cards. They're not XYZ or pendulum summons or link summons or anything like that. And really, to be competitive, you're going to have XYZs, link summons, pendulum summons, maybe also. So let's hop into a game here. I could have also gone to a different website who very possibly would have linked me to a completely different list of decks. Like, this Game 8 was the second thing to come up during a Google search as far as all that, as far as looking for meta decks. The main thing is to know just the phrase meta, and this masterduelmeta.com seems like they've got some guides and some leaks and updates and things like that. So yeah, there is potentially some stuff here. And what's funny about this is you could be somebody like Day 9, who was a big figure certainly around the Magic the Gathering gameplay, or the streamer called Trump, who was big around Hearthstone, and you can be so popular around that as that one celebrity, if you're that successful, one celebrity out of a million, to the point where you could have an entire website dedicated around showing decks and also promoting yourself, which is what I believe Master Duel Meta might be doing a little bit of, because when I did get to their just reload their page, it did pop up at the bottom that somebody was streaming live right now. Alright, change decks, tier limits. We are in the best position ever. Also, since we can't play ranked, to experiment with tier limits. Although it does create this bad problem now that if I jump into a casual match, it is potentially not going to be as difficult or as full of challenging players as it might be. Or I may just not be able to connect at all. That is also a possibility, is that there may be very little people that do want to play on casual. And we're only going to play just a little bit today. We spent the entire episode just deck building. I have to say, this is the part I think that is flawed as far as selling different fields, in that the selling of fields is designed in a way to make you jealous and want to buy more fields. So they let the opponent show off whatever field they've selected instead of it showing off whatever fields you've selected. So you're very often just going to have this weird divide. And at a certain level, that might have even made some sense, because there was a point in like the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series where each player having a field spell would change the way the fields looked in the holographic projectors, and there would be real effects due to that. But they simplified the rules in Yu-Gi-Oh! Fairly quickly after that, where only one field spell can be on the field at a time, and when you play a field spell in Master Duel, it has nothing to do with what the actual images look like here. This is all just cosmetic, and you don't even get to enjoy the fruits of your labor of owning a cosmetic change. This will be a good example of how good of a deck builder am I. This guy is doing a Dark Magician deck, and cannot target spells or traps you control of card effects. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Okay. Well, that sucks. Hand to the graveyard. Okay, so we want this spell. Is he going to do something to counter that? Nope, he'll just concede. Yeah, the danger here also is just going to be that as soon as somebody sees a two elements deck in casual, they may just run for the hills. There's no penalty for surrendering quickly. In fact, they may just surrender in general because I play too slowly. We should start going through the video game news. ScumVM is looking, I think, for more people to play and test out Mysterious Journey, the second supported game of the V-Cruise engine for public testing. Currently, it supports the DVD and digital English releases with subtitles in Dutch, English, French, German, Italian, Polish, Spanish, Greek, and Russian. If you're aware of any other versions, please contact them. ScumVM as a project to make a virtual machine type emulator that isn't quite an emulator, or at least I think that's what they often claim. If anything, that's probably great advertising, even if it's technically not true and it is an emulator. To claim you aren't an emulator, I think, keeps people like Nintendo from suing you. Although in the case of ScumVM, there's really never been a Nintendo game that they've tried to support. They've been expanding support ever since they already have perfected running all the Scum engine games. So now they're just expanding to other point-and-click style old PC games, to the point where they're going to rival the more generic or DOSBox solution. When your opponent activates an effect, You can special summon this from your hand. Okay, that's good. And he's gonna play Max C. So I don't want to potentially special summon too many things. Sending something to the graveyard, in that case, didn't trigger anything. I guess it did. Now I can get a Tear Laments deck card. Let's see. Let's not activate this. Let's activate this. Let's activate this one. And let's see if we can activate anything else in chain on the chain. You can banish this card from the graveyard, target 3 cards in any graveyard or up to 5. If Exchange of Spirits is on the field, shuffle them into your deck. Let's cancel that. Let's not activate that yet. So you start with like 3 cards on the field. Let's take a Tear Laments card. I guess part of the question here is how do you get cards out of the extras deck without using Cyberstein? Because we'd really like to do that. I'm gonna be asked to activate this card all the time. And at a certain level, I kind of would like to make a deck that just... might as well have activated that effect after all. I would like a deck that just doesn't prompt me as much to do things, but then it would lose more often. The way you win at any collectible card game is to have more options and be able to activate those options more often. The hard case, I guess, is what I have to call him now, as far as the person who runs Censored Gaming on his private Twitter, once again, is going through some kind of emergency, diagnosed with a large ulcer under his eye, which is also infected. At a certain point, it does kind of seem like maybe he's just incredibly incapable of taking care of himself, which like maybe there's just some mental problems there, and that would lead to both health problems. He is in the UK, so also just getting a doctor's appointment could take a long time. Certainly, it's free, but you have to wait. And you just take whatever drugs they tell you to take. I think they are kind of pushing the idea of the pharmacies in the UK being able to just hand out more things that would be like over-the-counter equivalent drugs without having to actually see a doctor, to try and reduce the wait time on the National Health Service in the UK. This guy is still playing. Yep. But yeah, he went through this whole homelessness stint and really doesn't have a permanent solution here. And even he admits it here on May 16th. It sucks that I've had so much non-channel stuff to sort out, but these have all been important things that I needed to do, a lot of which have been much more time consuming than they were supposed to be and I would have liked, which is typical how these things go. And it all just kind of boils down to either this guy is like really trying to get a lot of sympathy, maybe for Patreon type support, or for some other reason, or he is just like really in a bad situation. And to own a YouTube channel called Censored Gaming that has been quoted by a lot of mainstream video game journalists and is unfortunately the de facto most trusted news source for focusing on reporting on censorship in video gaming, there really should be somebody else funding him and in charge. He could be the editor certainly, but there definitely needs to be a rich organization, $1 million company behind him, just making sure he's paid well and taken care of, and also just funding better, more researchers, more editors. Yeah. I also, because of if this then that charging, because Twitter is charging to post to Twitter, I went through all my like social media sites that never went anywhere and pretty much have just abandoned that idea. It hasn't worked. Promoting myself on other services only gave a small extra number of views on those services. I would be willing to potentially try a new service if it made sense, but when you start to get to like Mastodon or Discord, it just doesn't seem like a large mass of people would be there for YouTube looking reasons. Let's see, let's add this. I guess add this. And I guess we could just add that back. Like the only social media service that I'm still really getting posts on is Tumblr. I could probably try to get Facebook working again. I put a note on Twitter that it's no longer being actively updated. There is definitely an argument, if YouTube would focus on anything or Google would focus on anything, that there is definitely an argument towards the idea of having a social media service actually built into YouTube or into some kind of Google service and integrated a lot better into YouTube. And nowadays it would almost certainly have some kind of chat, GPT, AI, large language model built into it too. I don't know what major benefits you would get from that. Yeah. It would be kind of crazy if you posted something on a service like Facebook and then an AI posted a response and reply or gave you a thumbs up, particularly if it was doing it in the voice of one of your friends or followers, just like trying to predictively respond to what your friend may actually say. You would literally just be talking to a robot at that point. Okay. So let's take one of these. And I guess you could take one of these. And I guess you could take one of these and do that. And that didn't lead to any extra attack, did it? I guess it has to be a beast warrior. So my strategy here is probably broken as a concept. What I can do is then toss something. Toss that. You can try and destroy that. But tossing something didn't really trigger anything being in the graveyard either. So Borbo and Trident are probably the only cards that matter. We can do a direct attack for 0 there. We can destroy that there for 200. We can go to the main phase. We can summon Zeus now. And that lets us do a board clear. Oh, no. Yeah, and this would require 2 dark monsters, so doing that doesn't make any sense. And can we activate this continuous trap? No. So, best case scenario, I'm just going to destroy his strategy. I'm going to activate this first. Toss these 2. I'm going to then activate this again. Toss these 2. I don't think a real reason to want to put so many things in the graveyard, though. No benefit to it. So we've got like a 10 chain happening here. Let's go ahead and send that to the graveyard, I guess. Clear the field. Chain. Destroy. Chain. 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 Take the one that can attack with the most attack. This will be our last game for today. I don't think we're... Yeah, I don't think we're going to learn too much, but we have learned something here. course, the problem with playing casual is that you really don't have any reason why people wouldn't quit. So let's edit this deck a little bit. Can I add a card here? Yes. I'll try that. Can we get rid of this? Yes. Can we get rid of this? Yes. Can we add a card here without crafting? No. We can do that though. So there's probably what I'm looking for. Although I could be wrong. Slight change. My other concern here is we seemingly didn't either special summon anything, or none of this can be done in casual. Which maybe none of it can be done in casual. So, to adjust for that, let's come over and play some of this. Come in here and we'll play solo mode. Yeah, overall it's been pretty quiet on Twitter, so like we have a cosplayer here of Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5. We did have the new Metal Gear announcement, so this could be a repost picture. There's a real danger certainly in taking selfies in a mirror, in that you just have no idea really where the reflections are going to take you on that, even if this was a stage thing. And honestly, it's kind of stupid that people take selfies in mirrors and cover their face. I guess that's probably intentional, but your camera has a face fronting mirror in which you could see yourself. So you could suction cup or just tape your camera to your mirror or mount it, and then you wouldn't do the whole reflection thing there. So there's better ways to very easily improve the visuals if that's what you're looking for, and as a cosplayer, I think that's the case. Although in all fairness, as a cosplayer, why are you hiding your face? Quiet is definitely a silly, crazy character created by a guy who wanted to make his silly, crazy character. This is a completely different deck we're playing now, so I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Best case scenario, I guess I just end my turn here and hope he doesn't attack, but there's really no reason why he wouldn't attack. Lib Retro has some bad news in that if you downloaded RetroArch on Windows today, they should check your file history for MediaFire. Trusted downloads from LibRetro always originate from buildbot.libretro.com or bot.libretro.com. Somebody broke in. At the moment, they have no indications as far of other systems, including core distribution, being accessed. Andrew Murphy's on the chat saying yo again. Hey, like I'm not going to respond to people saying yo a couple of times. 6 hours ago, unfortunately, the server hack was ongoing. Then 14 hours ago, they were investigating site issues. So this is breaking news as much as you can get breaking news in video games. That the emulator LibRetro's website was hacked. They probably need to find a different hosting service that would help them a little bit better. Um, although, in all fairness, you may pay a premium for professional hosting and get very little in the way of any better level of security. They say don't roll your own security, but sometimes a lot of these products that people say are professional and that are being sold are really not run in a professional manner. They're like, to a lot of people, professional means that something is done with pride and care and quality. To a lot of people, professional means it is done with the bottom dollar always in mind and done cheaply and as efficiently or efficiently for them as in the sense of spending the least amount of money in labor. In reality, professional just means you trick somebody into paying you to do something. Like, you literally only have to make a penny and then you're a professional at something. On that level, here you can see that at Platinum Games, they're celebrating the Wonderful 101 After School Hero Part 2 release with masks and decorations, although 3 of these masks are still COVID masks because they're very still concerned about that, or they're following lockdown rules. I'm not sure the Japanese people actually are that concerned about it, and only 2 of these are actually Wonderful 101 masks. And it looks like there might be some small bit of, I don't even know what that's supposed to be. It looks like some kind of hard candy. But they're actually in the office, still working. It's a cookie. So yeah, technically Platinum Games is paid, so they're professional. Does this look like a particularly professional video that you'd put out as a part of advertising and celebration? Not really. This is where you have a good dividing line where it would have made a lot of sense to simply take a picture of the cookie and post it as a still image and just put some text to describe things, instead of having your director in a t-shirt and jeans and this and everybody else just kind of in t-shirts. It just doesn't look particularly professional to my eye. Also, you look in the background and it's just, this is the middle of their office, which is a decently nice size office, and it's clean and everything. It just isn't really where you would shoot your presentation. Compare that to something like the Game Awards presentation. Now I have to remind myself that because I'm playing here on solo, there is no time limit, so I can just sit here forever. We have a new person on the chat called Lemonade saying, "What's my best card?" Maybe Ash Blossom, I guess, is the best card I have. Basically, I would say I have a significant percentage of all the cards. So, whatever the best card would be in meta deck, Ash Blossom, Zeus, Maxi, is the Tri-Brigade character I heavily lean on and use in my other deck. It would be a hard question to answer, certainly, if you asked what my favorite card was as much as what my best card is. Because inherently when I am playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm barely paying attention, and I'm just playing meta decks, so I'm just copying what other people told me to play. So I really don't have a favorite. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! To me is just something to do while talking, and could easily be replaced with a different collectible card game or any other very slow-paced, turn-based type gameplay. What do we want to special summon? Probably you want to banish this to summon this. One of my daily quests today is around the idea of destroying cards. I'm not sure how I'm really going to pull that off. Let's see. What's our other options here? 2200. I guess that works. 2 cards with different names. I think we got that. So if I was to just do that and that. Nope, that was 2 plus cards with different names. So let's actually summon this first. Then do that. 2 plus zombie cards for 2900. Okay. It's gonna be one of those. And one of those. One of those. Seriously, you're gonna take all my cards. One of the things I'll say, like as I was talking about watching the new Twilight Zone series on Freevee, is that the last episode on the first season, at one point shows a CGI attempt, a early, this would have been 2019, attempt at doing like a CGI realistic version of Rod Serling and having him show back, and it looks very bad. And the story around it just doesn't really make enough sense to justify using his image like that. Okay, what does this do? Okay, let's gain some extra attack. It feels like the last episode on season 1 of the new Twilight Zone may have actually been a pilot episode. To pitch the other episodes, and that they aired it out of order because it feels slightly different from the other episodes. They also have a weird gimmick in which they, on Amazon Prime Freeview, you can watch the new Twilight Zone in black and white like the original series, which is just stupid. I mean, if Rod Serling was around when he was making the Twilight Zone and he could have made it in color, he would have made it in color. Like, there's nothing special about the Twilight Zone in black and white. Okay. So we banish one from the graveyard. Bring that guy back. And I just have to keep on checking the summons here because I don't know what I'm doing with this deck, this loner deck. Looks like we might win though. Okay. So that clears and completes this solo story and gives me a card back, which, yay, like, who cares really. Did that, though, accomplish the daily missions? No. So I could duel in solo mode 2 more times, but seems to me like I am just going to miss out on the opportunity to win any of this unless I play in ranked, and if I play in ranked, I'll drop down from my rank of Platinum 5, and then I would start at a much worse rank tomorrow. And to duel 2 more times, I think you can literally just start a duel and then surrender, then start a duel and surrender, which will just take no time at all. And doesn't benefit you at all. It doesn't hurt you if you do surrender. I would say, getting back to the idea of what my best card is, it would be nice if there was more variety of playable cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead of a high level of top tier meta decks in the ranked. Did that count? No, it did not. So you actually do have to play all the way through. Which maybe I should just do that off screen. Yeah, we're hitting an hour and 50 into this point. I'll just play these levels off screen instead. And that'll be it for looking at any Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. Very little gameplay today, but we did get a deck rebuild out of it. Now it will just be a matter of whether that deck rebuild can actually evolve into something useful. The System Shock 2013 remake is out to what I would say is probably a little bit less fanfare than it probably deserves. Here we can see on OpenCritic that the critics are giving it a fair 74% average, 60%, 66% of people recommend it. I saw somebody's review saying that it is very much in line with the original System Shock in that it doesn't have any quality of life improvements or anything that would make the game easier. So you are potentially going to just run into some frustration points if you're looking for a more modern, simplified experience. Things that you would have gotten, say, in Resident Evil 4, where Resident Evil 4 originally you stood in one place where you shot, and now you can run and gun at the same time. I imagine more reviews will come out pretty quickly around System Shock in the next day or two. It's also, I guess, a little weird that it's coming out on a Monday. The there's something else I was gonna say, and I just lost my train of thought. Here is the interstitial single slide Google presentation webpage public link. That these will be interstitial web pages because I'm going through tabs on Firefox for the news, and I've made these up. There's room, obviously, for improvement with the visuals in that it is just a black background and my generic black background logo. The sides are black, however, so I can't really go with a white background or change the theme too much. It doesn't stretch all the way to the edge. The general idea is we're going through video game news, so you have your top headline there below the logo, and we're looking at GameDeveloper.com articles. Here I'm quoting a source at points showing that. Although things are out of order here, because I should be going through Video Games Chronicle first. But GameDeveloper.com is based out of San Francisco. I actually looked up this information. That way I didn't just make stupid assumptions. Because I definitely could have said Gematsu was based out of Japan because they're so focused on Japanese content. But actually, Gematsu is based out of New York City and basically run by one person, which I have to applaud how successful he has been at making a professional-looking website when run by one person. Game Developer is based out of San Francisco, but it is important to also know that their parent company Informa is UK-based. They are heavily industrial-focused. They talk about acquisitions and game development from the perspective of game developers talking to game developers, and events, game jams, things like that. They talk about they often have exclusive stories, which is the real reason why they're here, is that they talk from an exclusive perspective in industrial or have exclusive stories. However, they also I put the negatives usually at the bottom here. They also allow user content and advertisements, sometimes being advertised a little bit as editorials. They heavily are promoting their sister company, Game Developer Conference, as news, and their parent company, whatever they own. And they are often opinionated and agenda-based in that they often are pro-worker, pro-union for what they are. And often they have an agenda where they hate, say, Activision Blizzard, and then they will just publish articles over and over again to attack Activision Blizzard when there isn't really any new news to justify publishing an article. They also very often will link back to old articles, so they'll say that there's, say, a different company trying to union bust, and at the midpoint or bottom of this article, let's say 2K was trying to union bust, or Ubisoft was trying to union bust in a fictional story. At the bottom or in the middle of that article, they'll have a link pushing back to Activision Blizzard trying to union bust. So there's just totally an agenda being pushed there. So you would have that interstitial, and then you would have the news. That being said, for today, because of Memorial Day weekend, there is no GameDeveloper.com news. The last bit of news they published was on the 26th, that the Last of Us multiplayer was being reassessed. So then that brings us, I started out of order, didn't I? Yeah, I was the one out of order, but also my macro, I moved everything around, is out of order. I had to move everything around because I had to use a different method to open the tabs, which this is interesting to no one, I'm sure, but it changed how the macro worked. So here we have the interstitial for Video Games Chronicle. This would be the first source of news that I follow when we get to the video game news. It is based out of the UK. It has more of a Western focus as opposed to an Eastern focus like China, Japan, mostly Japan, South Korea. It often repeats other Western news sources, quoting, saying, well, who do they quote the most of? They're not consistent at repeating other news sources from one website. They just do pick up other people's news sources report on it. Jeff Grubb, I would probably be the best example, because Jeff Grubb is not a very good source, and he doesn't really care about being accurate as a journalist, and doesn't, I think, really care to be a journalist, which is probably true for most mainstream video game journalists. So they'll often repeat like rumors that Jeff Grubb reports on without really vetting it or doing anything. They occasionally report on stories that are UK exclusive. They'll talk about like the Pokemon Center in the UK, which is only really helpful if you are in the UK. But then they also, one of the worst things is that they label self-promotion posts as news. I also probably should rethink some of these capitalizations. Like, my programming brain wants me to capitalize basically every word, or the first letter in every word, but I'm trying to teach myself to be a bit more normal and only capitalize the beginning of a sentence, but I'm not 100% there, because then you definitely have some proper nouns like UK that should be capitalized. But yeah, Video Games Chronicle self-promote their podcast in particular and put that in the news section. And they make mistakes and show poor journalism every now and then. So they're by far not the worst Western video game news source out there. If I could find somebody better and spend the extra time to research it, I would, but I went through like a list of 500 mainstream video game journalist sites, and I was probably somewhere in the 1 to 200 spot before I found somebody that I could find tolerable. Almost every other mainstream video game journalist site at one time has pushed such a heavy agenda, such a crazy SJWE type agenda, when all I really want is more just plain flat, just the facts ma'am style news, which you just don't get that. And that's not just video game news, you just don't get that in general. That you're either getting extremely right-wing or extremely left-wing news when you're talking like 24-hour news channels. Again, though, very little happened over this weekend that they reported on, but Video Games Chronicles at least has a few stories on this page. For instance, NetEase has formed a new studio led by a key Dragon Quest producer. This is a Tokyo-based studio called Pincool, and it will focus on console games. There isn't a lot to say about the utter failure, it seems, around the Lord of the Rings Golem game, other than it was revealed to me that at some point Daedalic was acquired by Nacon, I believe is the name of the parent company now, and that probably explains a lot, in that that they were acquired by another company, and then their parent company forced them to shove out the game when it was unfinished. Of course, I am just making a lot of assumptions there and trying to provide cover in my own mind for Daedalic, and I'm not sure that Nacon or whatever company acquired Daedalic had acquired them when they started production of Lord of the Rings Golem. So it still would have been Daedalic's own fault from trying to shift from a point-and-click 2D German company into a 3D Lord of the Rings Golem game creating company. But it does potentially add an extra bit of information that might explain some things. Nintendo says here it explains its decision to block Steam's Dolphin release, saying it, quote, stifles innovation. They DMCA'd Steam and Valve, and at a certain level there is nothing Valve can do, because the laws have been written in such a way unless Valve wants to lose its safe harbor protection, which arguably I don't think Valve actually has a safe harbor protection anymore. I think they've already decided to stand by certain companies against obvious, false, ridiculous DMCAs and take no action. Even YouTube has increasingly ignored things inside of their own system when they are obvious false takedown claims. There is a possibility, I guess, that somewhere in Dolphin's code is something that resembles Nintendo's code, and that Nintendo knows about that Dolphin emulator code and thinks it actually has a legitimate claim to it. But more likely, this is just Nintendo being a bully, and we're now waiting to see if Valve has any real motivation to protect Dolphin emulator and fight against Nintendo. Not that Nintendo has any reason to be friends with Valve. Like, there are no Nintendo games on PC. There are no Nintendo games on Steam. To my knowledge, there's never been a Nintendo game on PC or Steam. So they have no reason, Valve really has no reason to be on friendly terms with Nintendo. Valve, with their Steam Deck in particular, will get way more new users by allowing the Dolphin emulator, so people can easily have the Dolphin emulator on their Steam Deck to run their copies of ROMs wherever and however they got those ROMs. Let's see. And any kind of excuse or explanation here really is just going to have to go to the courts to be proven true, if there's any truth to it at all. The initial part of the DMCA claim, as it seemed to be leaked, seemed to say that there was something they owned. It's been recently suggested, but we really don't know any facts, that Dolphin may not have been on good legal grounds because it had a weak common key, a cryptographic key, which was used by the Wii to decrypt games. Then, in that case, that a cryptographic key, is not copyrightable. It could be considered a trade secret, but if you could copyright cryptographic keys, then you could go on a tear and copyright every cryptographic key used anywhere and claim everything has a key, has your code in it. But the logic falls apart, because could you, let's simplify it from a cryptographic key, which is just a complicated digital form of a key, could you copyright a door key, just a standard door key with pins and hills and valleys in it, where you have a key cut to unlock a door or lock a door? Could you copyright that key as a physical piece of metal? No, I don't think you could. Could you copyright the encoding of that key, whether the peaks and valleys were at the number 5 point, 4 point, 3 point? If you watch Lockpicking Warrior, you will see, you will understand all of that. No, because then you would be simplifying the physical key into something even more simple, which would be just a set of numbers like 3, 5, 7, 4, 1, 2, depending on how many tumblers were in a key. So take the next step. If you had a giant key that had millions of tumblers, could you copyright that? No. And there's a big reason why I would say no to that. in that it doesn't have any creative value, and you can only copyright things that are creatively made. There was no creativity in a Wii common key. Dolphin, if that was the problem and the only problem, which it's not, obviously Nintendo just does not want emulators to exist at all, and they're going to go after it no matter what. But if that really was a problem, then you could just make the Dolphin emulator and not include the Wii common key, and then people who are downloading illegal ROMs would just also have to download the Wii common key, which is nothing. But so that argument's going to fall apart very quickly. If you were more trying to say that emulation was bypassing like anti-cheat, anti-hack measures, I mean, not really, because if you're using the key, you're not actually bypassing it, you're actually engaging with it the exact way it was. You're not bypassing a door lock by putting a copy of a key you have in the door. Like, that's not bypassing it. You're bypassing a door lock when you kick the door down or cut around the door lock and cut the door down. Yeah. Basically, Nintendo is just going to talk out of both sides of its mouth. They're going to leave Nintendo of America to do the cleanup and try to make Nintendo look like the good guys when clearly Nintendo is the bad guys. And as much as we all may love Nintendo games, Tears of the Kingdom, for instance, the truth is the success there has just led them to continue to really do bad things that most gamers all agree are bad things, and they've hurt the gaming community over and over again to protect their own profits and to lock people into their terrible services and ecosystems. It's the same problem with Disney. Sure, Disney has made some great movies over the decades, particularly some of their older ones, but they also do a lot of bad things as far as just the Disney Vault and overcharging and skyrocketing the price of going to Disney World. That's hurt fans of Disney more than anything. The quote here is that the emulator illegally circumvents the protection measures and runs illegal copies of games, both of which are just probably wrong statements. You don't know, first of all, that it illegally does anything because you're not the judge of the law. A judge is. It doesn't sound to me like it actually circumvents any protection measures, and even if it did circumvent protection measures, I don't know if that gets back to the realm of being illegal, and you don't know if the copies of the games are illegal or not. There's no DRM that exists, and there never will be, particularly for old Wii games, of which we have to remind people, this is a GameCube and Wii emulator, two systems that are effectively abandonware at this point. Nintendo is not selling GameCubes. They're not selling Wiis. You can't play a GameCube game or a Wii on the Nintendo eShop in the exact same way as you could play it on the GameCube and Wii. And a lot of Wii game and GameCube games are just not available on the Wii eShop. I'm not sure any of them are, actually. But yeah, they have no idea if the copies were made illegally or not. Some of them probably were. We'll give them that. That doesn't mean they all are. And you can't really sue a hammer because somebody uses it to bash somebody else's head in to commit a crime. You can't sue a hammer manufacturer for that. And the emulator is effectively a hammer. What other people do with it is not on them at all. Not in the United States, at least. Moving on, because I could go on a very long rant there, and there's not really too much actionable. I guess you write your local legislator, your congressmen, senators, try to get better laws passed. Try to stop terrible copyright laws getting passed further. Run for office yourself so that there are actually young people in positions of power to make laws that know how technology actually works, and possibly less corrupt politicians in the United States. Those are all the things you could do on a story like this to eventually make it better. Otherwise, it's just going to be a call for a boycott of Nintendo, which is very, very difficult, and very few people would stick with that. Or just general anger and yelling on the internet, which is not helpful to anybody. Apparently, Square Enix changed Final Fantasy XVI's user interface following fan feedback, then changed it back. The producer, Naki Yoshida, says the team decided to revert it to its original design. This Naki Yoshida character, in his interactions, really comes off as kind of a rough guy that seems to be a bit of a jerk. Apparently, there was also a PlayStation 4 version of the game in the works, and he just canceled that, which maybe that was a good decision. But also, he's come off rough, saying don't wait to buy it on PC. You have to buy it on the PlayStation 5, otherwise it's not going to sell enough that we'll even begin to consider to put it on the PC. And then they also talked about thinking about dropping the numbers altogether. If anything, he may not be as big of a jerk as he sounds like in a lot of his comments that he's getting quoted on, but he is at the very least talking way too much. He should really be hyping and selling Final Fantasy XVI, and I am just not seeing any hype or selling of Final Fantasy XVI at all. It just seems like he wants to talk more about the development or things slightly askew from the game. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Tears of the Kingdom tops the UK box charts for the third week. Lord of the Ring Golem enters the 6th spot. Enters at the 6th spot. Zelda sales dropped 50%, but are still comfortably top. Which that's probably a bad way to report that, to say there was a massive amount of Tears of the Kingdom sales the first week it was out, and then there was so much saturation at that point because everybody had a copy of the game that it dropped 50%. And Lord of the Rings Golem entering at 6 probably is just because it was a bit of an oddity. Let's see. Here we have another Japanese director upset. Taken's 8's latest character reveal was posted too early, upsetting the director Harada. The game producer has also apologized for the trailer's early publication. He complained about it on Twitter. What's funny is I guess we still are seeing some kind of large number of non-Western, non-American people on Twitter. The Japanese people, I don't think, really got on board of leaving Twitter for something like Mastodon as fast as the Western people did. Let's see. Moving on. Diablo 4 players who pull off a hardcore challenge will have their names added to a statue. The first 1,000 players to reach hardcore level 100 will be immortalized. Which, okay, that's a cool little gimmick, but it does probably highlight the online MMO nature of Diablo 4 that they are trying to promote, whereas I am very much in the feeling that I would like Diablo 4 to mostly just be a single player game. No, I want it to be 100% single player. I just don't think a Diablo game needs to be online or have a market shop or any kind of extra grindy elements. It was already a very grindy game to begin with. Adding more grindy elements to make the game last longer is not what I want. I would prefer them just to release a Diablo 4 and it be a decent 200 hours, and then a year later for them just to release a DLC to add a few more hours. Yeah, that's almost what season passes were supposed to be, but they've really become something very different from that. Because very often, almost always now, when you get a season pass, it is not a guarantee of 4 expansions of quality and a decent amount of size of content. It's often a season passes, here's some cosmetics, or here's some extra credits, or here's one expansion of the gameplay, but that's it. Moving on, Disneyland Dreamlight Valley teases that Cinderella's fairy godmother may be added to the next update. I haven't heard anybody really say anything about Dreamlight Valley as kind of a Disney adults Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing game. I don't know if it's maintaining enough momentum to matter. Here is the earlier version of that story of Nintendo blocking it. The one thing I can hope about this story is, though, that the Team Dolphin actually dispute the DMCA and then it goes back up, and then they force Nintendo to sue them. You have to like file a lawsuit in 2 weeks, but Nintendo would really have no problem doing that. Here in the story, they're saying that one expert is claiming it's because they include encryption keys. I just don't really agree with that idea. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Quoting the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, they mentioned Dolphin in the DMCA? No, this is quoting the DMCA takedown notice. So this is the takedown. The Dolphin operates by incorporating these cryptographic keys without Nintendo's authorization. Now, incorporating may mean that the end user still has to provide the keys, and decrypting the ROMs at or immediately before runtime. Wii common key is in the emulator source code. This brings about an interesting question too. If somebody puts a DMCA takedown notice on software, I don't think anything stops you from making a new version and uploading it at that point. It's a lot more difficult, certainly on YouTube, to make a different version of a video and put it up if somebody's claiming it. But YouTube has made that fairly easy also, where you can edit it out. So even if Nintendo did get its way because they included the encryption keys, they could easily just change the source code to not include the encryption keys on the Steam version, and then there would be a Steam version out again. So this could very easily be a very hollow victory, and if Dolphin Emulator is open source, you could make a port without the encryption key fairly quickly. So yeah, it's probably going to be a hollow victory. It's already a pretty hollow victory because more people today know about the Dolphin emulator and potentially running it on Steam or a Steam Deck than they did yesterday. So it is the Barbara Streisand effect. I guess it's just called the Streisand effect, where the more Nintendo complained about it, the more people heard about the complaints. The Last of Us multiplayer game has reportedly been scaled back. I am not sure if it's scaled back as much as it's canceled, secretly canceled, or just in development hell. we really won't know ever, I guess, what it could have been or what it will be until it comes out. At least we'll know what it is at that point. We probably talked about this. Microsoft revealed that the CMA appeal grounds and says that the UK regulator overestimates the role of cloud streaming. I did hear a YouTuber talking about how the vast majority and mentality, particularly in the UK, is to buy PlayStation 5 versions of games. Microsoft and Xbox not really doing great when it comes to buying a physical disc game. If anything, I guess Microsoft has done a great job of selling themselves as being a true competitor to Sony when really they haven't been that much of a competitor to Sony. Yeah, if Microsoft got out of the market, then it would just be Sony and Nintendo still fighting for very different types of games and different audiences. And if Nintendo got out of the market, then Sony would probably just have a de facto monopoly unless some new companies got into the market. I could see Apple, if they started to care about games, making a console, and that would be a game changer. But that would be about it. I don't know of any other company. Well, if Amazon, Amazon just announced a new tablet that looked like it might be pretty decent for the price. So if Amazon got into the console market, they could probably do really well. And if Amazon got into the console market, maybe Walmart would get into the console market on some level. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article for today is that CD Projekt has dismissed rumors that Sony may be acquiring it. I don't know if Sony really has enough money to acquire CD Projekt, which I guess they just dropped the red at some point. As far as it used to be called CD Projekt Red. Yeah, there's just too much money invested in CD Projekt for Sony to really invest in them. Plus, really not that many successes or that good of a management team or good of a programming team to really justify why Sony would buy them. Now, had Cyberpunk 2077 come out and it was amazing, then it would be a much better argument. Had The Witcher 3 had Witcher 2 and 1 been published by CD Projekt and been as good as The Witcher 3, then you'd have more of an established success. But at the moment, it really is that The Witcher 3 is their only major success in recent history as far as CD Projekt, which that's not good enough grounds, in my opinion, for Sony to even consider acquiring him, even if Sony was desperate, and they probably are desperate for first-party titles. It would be also very interesting, but kind of insulting to the Japanese audience, and Sony of Japan would probably have a problem with this, if they acquired, I believe it's a Swedish company, to make a fantasy RPG game in The Witcher 3, Witcher 4, or a sci-fi game in Cyberpunk 2077, considering there are plenty of Japanese companies that already make fantasy RPG games that would be better targets to acquire if you wanted a company that was known for making good fantasy RPG games. And there's enough companies out there in Japan that would have made sci-fi games too. Like you think about the movie Akira. That's a very old anime movie, but Cyberpunk is heavily influenced by that. So why have a Swedish company make a cyberpunk type game kind of inspired by things like Akira, when those kinds of sci-fi stories have been told in Japanese cultures for long enough that there definitely would be a team out there. and Cyberpunk in particular, didn't fail because it was a Cyberpunk story. If anything, it succeeded more because it was a Cyberpunk story. It failed because it was a buggy mess. So there really should be 2 or 3 other Cyberpunk games in development at this point. I don't know if they really are. So then this brings us to the follow list cleanup interstitial. That's what I'm calling these, is things that are indications. And when we normally stream, I am going to just go through these very quickly. There is a link here if you want to see what my followed games are. Of course, you can't click on links on a YouTube video. Games are placed on the follow list for later evaluation. They are usually placed very fast. The list is curated by my personal overall impressions of the game. Games with less than 30 reviews are referred to as irrelevant. That's why that's in quotes. Games in early access after 6 months are thought of as unfinished, although I don't really use the phrase unfinished much. Games that are reviewed poorly are unliked. Another phrase I don't really use, but yeah. Games that were reviewed poorly are removed. Games I approve of are added to the wish list. Now at this point I also say warning may contain adult content, which that is a part of this that creates this weird situation. Because the follow list is where it is, the show takes a slight change in nature. May it contain adult content is almost too small. There's a decent chance that we'll cover an adult game. Now, I just noticed here too that the slideshow controls pop up when you hover over here on this page. There is only one slide. Otherwise, this would be cycling through different slides. That's not too bad, but it does kind of suck that it seems like if you're anywhere around the quarter mark, it pops up. Yep, there's just a very large box in which you would have to avoid. And you can see here the fault list didn't want to load. I'm still trying to figure out what's the best quality of service, if I even need quality of service on my router. Otherwise my router seems to be fine. I programmed in the other VPN keys, although I'm not sure I had the right VPN key information programmed in the first place. So we have a game here that is just irrelevant at 23 reviews from 2021, so we can get rid of that from the follow list. Here we have one that's irrelevant with only 2 reviews, so we can get rid of that. This has also been in early access after 6 months. Here we have a Sonic clone game called Freedom Planet, which is Freedom Planet 2, which is overwhelmingly positive, so I'll put that on the wish list. And then we have a game called Freediver, which is very positive, but is VR, so I'll leave it on the follow list. Frankie's Adventure from 2021 looks interesting, but I would assume it's a very short, almost vertical slice of a game. 73% positive, 15 reviews. Metroidvania type idea with sword fighting concepts. There's not a lot of games where you do sword fighting. Let's look at the reviews here. I'll probably have to say no to it just because it's irrelevant, but really wanted to give this game a chance, but alas, I don't think I can recommend the game. First off, the lack of custom controls was frustrating, and ended up using WASD. I haven't used that in a while to rebind my controls. For future reference, the default keyboard controls for platforms is generally Z jump, X attack. Never use spacebar for jump. Music frequently glitches. But you can see in the demo pretty much all the enemies of the game. There's 0 bosses in the game. Not even a last boss. Game challenges you to mash a bunch of trash mobs in the same room and make you kill them. Yep, that seems to me like there's just not quite enough polish to it. And yeah, this is a case of somebody trying to be ambitious and making more of a vertical slice or game jam game, and then trying to sell it for $4.99, discounting it at one point to $1.49. And you can see that there's kind of a lack of care even in the developer putting the wrong information and just saying "see above" as the publisher, and that clearly isn't supposed to be the actual publisher's name. So yeah, that goes. It did have some potential there, but unfortunately there's just a lot of games on Steam that have potential but don't get anywhere close to be relevant enough to cover and play. Same case here. Only 10 reviewers. Fragmented Memories Arc 1. Looks like it's a psychological horror point and click adventure game. English only. Yeah, this is one of those RPG Maker game horror games, which there's already a kind of best of the best top tier of those games either on my wish list or fall list, and since this one doesn't have that relevancy, it has to go. I wouldn't really call that a point click adventure though. Fox Adventures can leave. The one thing I didn't put in the description is that it's alphabetical, but whatever. It's not really that big of a piece of information to say that we're going through the fall list in an alphabetical order. It's another game with no reviews. Foxhole is a massive multiplayer game. Doesn't look terrible, and it is very positive, but it's an MMO, and I don't play MMOs, or don't review them. Fox and Island. There's a lot of these play as an animal in nature games, and I think I've made some decent progress to filtering out the wish list and the fall list to the best of those, of which there may only be a couple. And see, this is where we get out of order, because what should have been next should have been either Gamatsu News. Well, actually, Gamatsu News should have been before the fall list cleanup, then GameDeveloper.news after the fall list cleanup. Then we look at all the games that came out. So here's our interstitial. Gamatsu is based out of New York City, USA. It has more of an Eastern focus, specifically Japan. They say that directly in their own website. They often report press releases with no commentary, which is why I liked them, because it's just the facts. And they often report stories that are Japanese exclusive, often meaning that they put out press releases for Japanese games that are literally getting snubbed by mainstream video game journalists in the West. Like when there is a visual novel that comes out and gets announced, it does not get reported on at IGN or Giant Bomb or GameSpot, anything like that. They are specifically censoring / filtering out things they don't care to talk about for one reason or another. I won't even bother to attribute a reasoning behind it. It's just a fact that it happens. It's obvious to anyone who pays any attention. They sometimes get unique interviews on very rare occasions, which makes Gematsu an interesting first-party source when you get those rare interviews, but not very often. And then the worst thing I really can say about Gematsu is they don't curate minimal or repetitive stories. So there was a point where press releases were getting released for every single demon in Shin Megami Tensei 5 about a year ago, and it was somewhere around 6 months that every single day they had an article about a demon of the day, and it flooded their website with far too many articles. Even at that, though, not really a lot of news from Gematsu either. I assume that has something to do with Memorial Day weekend, but probably not as much as you would think. I guess it probably has more to do with the one person running Gematsu being in the United States, maybe celebrating Gematsu. Memorial Day weekend. Zombie Soup launches in early access on PC on June 7th. So we will look at it. It's a top-down shooter. Yeah, it looks like it might be good. Let me just turn off all the cosmetic filters and just point out how good Gematsu looks when you know that only one person runs it. That being said, it is very much that these are WordPress type plugins, and so a lot of this is done fairly automated. But yeah, 44 bytes is making the website for him. But yeah, you look at this front page and this looks as good as any other mainstream video game journalist site. Which that may be a sad fact, certainly, around how much formatting makes a site look good compared to how much actual content is needed in a website. Like, as long as it looks pretty, a lot of people probably will think it's professional, even if it was just saying lorem ipsum or gibberish in the reviews and news articles. Let's see. Blaze Union Story to Reach the Future remaster for iOS and Android is now available in Japan. Which, this is obviously some kind of cell phone game. I don't know if it's, I guess, a strategy turn-based RPG game. And it probably won't come to the West, if anytime soon at least. Apparently it was first launched for the Switch on April 27th. So it's also kind of weird to have a Switch, more console game move to cell phones, where more we've seen cell phone games try to move to the Switch. Natsumon 20th Century Summer Vacation details its daily life and characters. This is a very Japanese summer adventure game. If it is summer in the West, it's probably, if it's summer in the upper hemisphere, it's probably summer in Japan too. So I imagine there would be a limited amount of time in which you get these summer games released. These are very pixely blown up images. of those characters. And they're kind of concept arts, not what you actually see in the other parts of the game. Even here it looks pretty pixely, but once you blow it up, you can definitely see some pixeliness. Let's see. NetEase Games establishes the Tokyo-based studio Pincool, led by Ryutaro Ichimura. It is a multifunctional studio aiming to produce global entertainment content, they say. Who is this person? He was the longtime producer on the Dragon Quest franchise. So he might also be the exact person who announced he was leaving. Yes, he left Square Enix in March after 23 years, and now he is working for NetEase, which is really another testament to Square Enix dropping the ball as far as keeping their talent happy and working for them. Which I think that may just be a new concept in Japanese business, particularly for Square Enix, that you have to actually treat your employees nice enough that they want to continue working there. Because we are seeing a shift even in older Japanese creatives, in the video game industry at least, being willing to leave and start their own companies or leave and work for somebody else. Whereas even a decade previous from here, that would have been unthinkable to a Japanese person to leave your job. Of course, that probably is also a failure of the Japanese unions, that Square Enix and so many companies in Japan treat their employees so badly that people want to leave and start their own companies or work somewhere else. Taken 8 Brian Fury has a gameplay trailer. This, I think, is the guy whose announcement came out too early. This week's Japanese game releases are Street Fighter 6, Loop 8, Summer of Gods, and more. The Company of Heroes for the PS5, Etrian Odyssey Collection, Loop 8, Summer of Gods, Street Fighter 6, and We Love Katamari Reroll and Royal Reverie, which might be a remaster because it has Reroll in the name. I think it is a remaster. And it's probably a remaster of a sequel of Katamari, We Love Katamari, with the subtitle Royal Reverie. Not a lot of digital only releases this week. Usually this list is much longer. Here we can see System Shock is coming out tomorrow. Not out yet. Let's see, RGG Summit Summer 2023, the Ruga Gotoku Studio new title presentations are set for June 16th. The Like a Dragon series updates and more are likely incoming. So, basically an announcement for an announcement. Honkai Star Rail version 1.1 update Galactic Roaming launches June 7th. A new Dragon Quest monster title is in development for the Switch. Okay. Dragon Quest in development doesn't really mean much of anything, considering they did announce like a year ago that they were working on a dozen Dragon Quest games to release, and they definitely seem determined to flood the market with Dragon Quest games. And I doubt that's going to get you much of a boost in your audience. Dragon Quest is very popular in Japan and practically unheard of outside of Japan. Like, all these characters, as you're looking at them, are supposed to be iconic Dragon Quest characters that I'm sure Japanese fans will recognize. But as a Westerner, I can see a Slime King. I assume that's a Slime King. That's what you would call that. And that's pretty much it. This guy kind of looks like Goku. And then you have some generic, like, golem characters and dragons, obviously, but yeah, nothing recognizable there to a Westerner. Infinity Stress Dragon Quest The Adventures of Dai launches September 28th for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Switch, and PC. Which, if it's coming to the Xbox Series, I would assume it is going to get a Western release. And even this art style is fairly different from what we just looked at. This is an action RPG hack and slash game, but it is, I think, more of a side story. Experience the story of the legendary anime series Dragon Quest The Adventures of Dai. I've never heard of this anime series. But it does certainly open the door that if I was going to play Dragon Quest games, this may be the first one to actually come to PC. Of course, it is also Square Enix, so we don't know for certain that it's actually going to be good in any way. And then, let's see, Komatsu says Witcher 3 Wild Hunt sales have topped 50 million, and the Witcher series overall has topped 75 million, which that is a real sad statement on the sales of Witcher 1 and Witcher 2, which they have really failed to convince people to really want to go back and play Witcher 1 and Witcher 2. One could only hope that the reboots, if they are making a reboot, hey, I do own all of this. When did I buy that? I guess I could play Witcher 3 at some point. I need to remind myself to do that at some point and do the DLC that I didn't do when it first came out. There really isn't a lot of good reason, though, to play The Witcher 3 now when we really don't have any confirmed releases or teasers or trailers for a Witcher 4 or a Witcher reboot. The immature rating didn't hurt it at all. I wish more game developers and publishers would realize that. Although in all fairness, maybe it did hurt its sales. Maybe it would have been a 300 million seller if it wasn't rated immature. Typically, you would expect it to be a little bit higher. Of course, that's just going to be speculation on my part. Okay. So that's going to put me in this weird position where this would have been a new game, and then the 3 games we just looked at on video games Gamatsu are going to be at the end. Just trying to get all organized out of the mess that this all turned into, and it is a pretty big mess. So now we're doing all games on Steam, although we will have to jump back and do some other stories in other windows, because when I was testing my programming, I opened the multiple windows and ran the macro multiple times. So here is the, generically speaking, the list, the URL I use to see all new games released. You just run a search and then sort by released _ descending. Now this isn't actually what I search by. I filter out languages, which leads to a much longer URL by filtering out Chinese exclusive games. And you still have to be logged in and have the adult option checked in your preferences to actually see adult games when you do this search. And you can see there's a long description here. Perhaps I've gotten too long in the description. I probably should make double columns. The general idea, though, is that games are quickly evaluated to be added to the fault list. We're giving it just instant judgments, half a second looks. All games of interest are made also into YouTube Shorts. Evaluations are based on my personal opinion on first impressions. Games with generic or mismatched visuals are generally referred to as asset flips, even if they can't be proven to be asset flips or aren't actually asset flips. These are generic phrases I use to try to convey what I think I'm seeing. So don't try and come back and sue me, basically, for saying the wrong thing. Games with generic 8 or 16-bit style pixely RPG visuals are generally referred to as RPG makers, or in this case I've added the phrase style, and that is a lot of wiggle room by adding the phrase style there. Again, the game may not actually be made in RPG Maker. It just looks like that. Games with dark screenshots often are referred to as having dark screenshot syndrome, which is just a dumb phrase I made up, but it's so common and prevalent in games that it is a useful term, even if I just made it up. Games with 2D, bright, colorful color palettes are often referred to as anime style when looking at the characters. If it's a 2D character and they're bright and colorful, I typically call that anime style. Now, where you get into the weeds now is the different types of anime styles here. And particularly since if you don't know how these words are written in Japanese or how they're read, it's going to sound weird. So, kawaii, that's the way it's spelled, anime style, are characters that are short and anatomically inaccurate. They have big heads, big eyes. They're just not really going for anything realistic, anatomically speaking, that you might see in a more Western focused games. Moe, which is just written Mo, anime style, are characters that are shorter than kawaii, and even more anatomically inaccurate just because they're shorter. Usually shorter limbs, shorter, bigger heads, relatively speaking. Kawaii in Japanese roughly translates to cute. Moe roughly translates to a character that's designed to give you a warm heart feeling, a baby, a puppy, things like that are the idea. Then you have chibi anime style, which are characters that are even shorter and even more anatomically accurate. And at the point of chibi, you are really, really far from them even looking like a human. They have giant heads, they barely have any limbs. It's usually a chibi character is depicted from a top-down perspective at some angle, so you're barely seeing anything other than the head. Now, that's very wordy. So, I probably should combine these three sentences. I could probably say, anime style characters are often short and anatomically inaccurate, ranging from kawaii to moe style to chibi anime style. And again, I'm just adding style because I'm sure there are some Japanese people or some anime fans out there that would argue whether I called something moe when it was kawaii or vice versa. Games with 3D CG natural color palettes are often referred to as realistic style or Western style. And then hentai, in case you aren't familiar with that, games are games of a heavy sexual nature, typically in an anime style visuals. I should add visuals there. And then we have here warning may contain adult content. And even in the description, you're highlighting the problem that if I am covering adult games, half of this description from about this point, I can't highlight text as a PowerPoint. Interesting. I can edit it, so that's one of the beautiful parts about this, is that I can go and edit these slides at any point, so I'm not stuck with some static visual, and I can change the fonts, and it can do all kinds of things that you would do in a word processing thing. But yeah, from this point downward, we are just addressing anime games and adult games, of which there's a lot of anime adult games out there. From this point upward, we're just addressing other kinds of games. But it really doesn't have to be that wordy either, because normally I would go through the news. In this case, it would be GameDeveloper.com news, which I guess I just don't even have any GameDeveloper.com news today, unless we skipped it or went out of order. We may have gone out of order. Yeah, we did. I would do the GameDeveloper.com news. I'd get to this point, and then I would just close the tab very quickly. There's not really a reason to go any further on that. So people would have to pause on the list, pause on that frame to actually read it. So I'm not actually planning to be that helpful. We can scroll down here and see the new games that came out. Since today's the 29th, about the 26th would have been Friday, and then the 27th would have been Saturday, and then the 28th. So not really a lot of games even came out over Memorial Day weekend, which is probably a hint that all games are probably getting approved by somebody at Valve, and people that somebody at Valve was not working that weekend. So yeah, just quick evaluation. Here's something I would call anime style, but overall it does also just look like an RPG Maker game, but multiple descriptions definitely can be used. Here we have something that I would lean towards an anime style, but in all actuality I heavily doubt is made by a Japanese person, considering it's English only and it's just not visually polished that much. Here we have a horror game that probably isn't quite enough to interest me, but the visuals look unique enough that I don't think I would call it an asset flip. This looks like nothing. A lot of things still get described as just nothing, or I just have no comment on it at all. This looks like this might be something. A lot of times I'm still saying this might be something. I should probably say let's give it a follow. Here's our first adult game for today, so we are going to get some adult games over the weekend. Angela's Love looks like it is literally kind of a tower defense game with asset flipped anime girl 3D models that are completely nude, and on the left side of a really ugly screen, and then there's these generic clay monsters that don't look anything like the 3D models on the left of the anime girls that is coming from the right fighting them. This game is $1.19, and yeah, not really worth anything. I'll leave it at that. That is also something I didn't mention, is that I'm saying warning may contain adult content, but I am also doing my darndest here to start the blur as fast as possible when we are looking at an adult game. And I still haven't gotten any complaints from YouTube, so I guess I'm doing alright. Here's a game that's a great example of dark screenshot syndrome, just hiding things or really poor screenshots being made. Road Defense Outsiders. Roguelike tower defense may elevate the idea of a tower defense enough that I'd be willing to give it a shot. Bewitched Balls sounds like it would have been an adult game. Looks like it's basically nothing. No. Terror. It's not quite polished enough. The Malice Kingdom. I'll give that one a chance, although it doesn't have that much. If anything, I guess I'm going to put this on the fall list, but I'm not going to make a YouTube short around it because it's not visually polished enough. I am still running into the problem that I have a ton of YouTube shorts and really no way to curate. Here's another dark screenshot syndrome game. Often no horror games with that problem. And I never really did figure out why some videos play and some videos don't. I can only assume that some videos are hosted on one website and some videos are hosted on YouTube. I probably need a more generic stop videos from auto-playing option. So this next adult game we have here is called Heavenly Badonkers Angel B-Word B-I-T-C-H. Looks like it's an RPG Maker game, heavily playing on just ridiculously large breasts. You're talking double G's and bigger, I would say. So if you're into giant boobs, I think you've got something here, potentially around a generic adult game with a lot of focus on, I guess, that fetish, but you still would just be playing a generic RPG game. They want $15.99. They say it has full Japanese audio, which I always question how much that really exists as far as the voice acting. Seems like probably there's voice acting in the adult scenes, and that's probably it. It's selling for $15.19 again. Yeah. It's a very unique fetish, so it doesn't catch my eye. Yeah, because you get into a level of just grotesque deformation at a certain point where that what you're looking at is not naturally human. It's either basically a tumor size cleavage. But I definitely could see that there's a lot of people that are into that extreme every now and then. But then you just get back to the RPG element, and that gameplay would probably be a problem. I just don't see a need to make adult games that are long and grindy in RPG Maker terms. Guess we'll say no to this. Code of War gun shooting games is too generic a name. That's not something I even mentioned, but yes, a generic sounding name looks low effort, so I might dismiss it because of that. That is, I guess, under the headline of general first impressions. This might be something. And I guess if my speculation is correct that somebody is looking at all the games and approving them or disapproving for their release, then somebody must have actually approved those two adult games we've seen so far. And give this a chance. Although, would I make a YouTube short around it? No. I'm arguably not moving fast enough. Tornado Research and Rescue. We'll give that a chance. There was a train simulator game that was free on Steam. We're kind of seeing an increased number of free games on Steam, and they were talking about it on slickdeals.net. The problem with it, though, is that it seems like it's free because everybody hates it and it's just not a good game. Which, yeah, what's the point of owning a game if it is very poor quality? This Fugato Shadows of the Caribbean, I want it to be good. It's mixed at the moment, but I'll put it on the fall list. But I'm gonna say, because it's mixed at the moment, then Mob Rule has voted to not make a YouTube short on it. And I may use that as a way of curating things too. That won't curate very many games though. Almost all games that get YouTube shorts have no reviews around them. And won't have many reviews for a long time. This is definitely a different art style, but it definitely feels like this is the kind of art style you would expect a high school kid to draw in their notebook. And it might be a sad statement that these art styles get taught away as being a bad art style when, if kids go into art classes in college or get apprenticed somewhere. I could see a style like this as far as the angles and the character designs on a Cartoon Network Nickelodeon TV show, but the color palette and the amount of shadowing and detail I imagine would be fairly improved to slightly change how it actually looked. I guess overall I'm saying no to that game. Blockade looks like it's too simplistic. War for the 14 Dynasties looks too simplistic. Return, we'll give a chance to. Radiant Cell. I think we'll say no to that. Adventures of Quinn 85. Looks like this is possibly a joke game. Magneto Horizon looks interesting. Train Operator 377. I'll give it a chance, although I don't know why I am giving it a chance, because it does literally just look like a train simulator game. Yeah, I don't need to put that on the follow list, and I wouldn't make a YouTube short around it. This has a lot of dark screenshot syndrome, but this actual trailer looks somewhat intriguing. And what's funny is this is in the adult game section for frequent gore, mature content, nudity, gore, and sexual content, which I'm not seeing a lot of sexual content. Up to 4 players, but it's single player online co-op. It's English only. An early access horror co-op game. This game is selling itself fairly well, except for the fact that it's in the adult section when very possibly shouldn't be. But I bet it's not really as much as it is promising with the screenshots. Since it is multiplayer focused, I'm going to say no to it. We can say no to a Marvel Madness clone. Lost Bits. Oh, is a little weird. I'll say yes to that. Then we have a horror RPG maker with some dark screenshot syndrome also. I'll say no to that. And then that brings us to the 3 games we already looked at. So then that is one window. I have a ton of other windows with just a little bit left that need to clean up. a lot of it, if not all of it, is going to be redundant, though, so this may be very easy to pull off. Yeah. There's this one demonic demoniac words. Which, yeah, that doesn't look quite polished enough. There is potentially maybe a minimalist art style where you would have characters that are very simplistic, but then you kind of ruin that minimalistic art style when you have just an asset flip 3D characters here. And this really feels like this is a word teach Asians how to speak, teach Chinese people how to speak in some weird way. The idea of like minimalistic demons floating around people, that visual might work as an interesting idea. But overall, we know this is garbage. And then need for drifting. Also, we can say no to. Alright. So now I'm going to have to just pull up any other windows that might have been minimized just to see if there's anything else. Yeah, we've got this other collection of games. Blue Man Adventures, no. Double Detective. I hope we're not going to have to load every single tab up. It looks like we might. That's alright though. There's only about 10 tabs here. So yeah, the whole thing is really a mess. Spiral Dystopia looks like a possibly decent visual novel, so we'll do that. This looks like a visual novel that maybe doesn't support English, and we're calling it a love simulation game. It's a Korean love simulation game. That explains some of the differences in gameplay style that I see here, and the different lettering, obviously. Maybe just a slightly different focus on the feel and theme of it. Give this a chance. I guess I probably should take it as a victory that nobody has complained about YouTube shorts around visual novels or anime looking games. Although it may very well just be a case that people just flip most of the time when they see that kind of stuff if they're not interested. Here we have an adult game called Hentai War, W-A-R, which is just like anime girls naked running around. They have guns and chainsaws and you're just shooting them, which I never get that concept. I know this is just a low effort asset flip game anyways. They're selling it for 89 cents, and English is its first language. It says it has full audio, and then the second language is French, then Italian, then German, then Spanish. But yeah, it never makes sense. If you did want to see anime girls running around naked, particularly in the case of this game where they're not really doing anything or very nicely polished, why shoot them? Like, why make them the enemies that you're shooting? That's very violent and creates a weird interconnection for what you could only assume is connecting the idea of violence and sex in a way that's probably not healthy. Okay. I think we are probably good then. Yeah. And that, I guess that does also, like, these games were from Friday, so we already talked about these. That also means I need to make one more slide as far as for the end of the show. Some kind of thank you for watching slide. That way, that is the absolute last tab that we end up. That was a main goal that I forgot to do. And yeah, I've got a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! I need to play, but very little actually today until the month resets that I can do. And then I've just got tons of uploading to do, tons of scheduling to do. And so it's going to be a lot of paperwork type work happening over the next week, I imagine. Thank you to everybody who opted into the chat. I think either I got extremely lucky or my new rules did help quite a bit with the chat. I did see I was getting a decent amount of views over the weekend from my Friday live stream. That probably helped a lot also. But the rules, I think, have helped in that we have people saying hi and nobody being particularly annoying, which is a great thing too. So hopefully we can see the chat grow and possibly even create a consistent community of positivity, or at least decency amongst our fans. We don't have to be hyper positive or saccharine sweet. Just don't be a troll. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, too bad. There basically aren't any. Any of the links in the description are probably not getting updated with the exception of Tumblr. And leave me a comment, I guess, of any new site to potentially investigate. The main problem is I need something that would automatically just post either from my RSS feed or post from YouTube and be directly connected into YouTube. If you want to support me further, however, there is a link to Patreon. I haven't checked it lately to see if it's still working, but last time I looked it was working. And then there is ways in which you can friend me on Steam and give me a gift card or give me a game off my wish list to help support this channel and fund me in the form of having more games to make content from. Thank you for watching.